My name is Madison Carter, and I was never supposed to survive. For years, I thought it was just bad luck, strange illnesses, dizzy spells, the way my husband and his sister always insisted on handling my food. But then, I saw the truth. They weren't just controlling me, they were trying to get rid of me. But they made one mistake, thinking I was too weak to fight back. This time, I was the one setting the trap. I used to believe that love meant trust, that when you built a life with someone, you were safe in their hands. But I was wrong, so wrong. It started with little things, my coffee tasting off, a wave of nausea after dinner, headaches so intense they blurred my vision. "You work too hard," Liam would say, rubbing my back. His sister, Vanessa, would nod sympathetically. "You should rest more, Maddie. Let us take care of you." I wanted to believe them. I needed to. After all, Liam was my husband, the man who once swore he'd protect me forever. And Vanessa? She had always been distant but polite, smiling just enough to seem warm. Then, one night, everything changed. I woke up gasping for air, my chest tight, my hands trembling. My entire body felt wrong, like I was floating and sinking at the same time. I tried calling for Liam, but my throat was too dry. I barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting violently. Panic gripped me. This wasn't normal. This wasn't stress. Someone was poisoning me. And I had a terrible suspicion who. The next morning, I didn't say a word. I just watched. How Liam handed me my coffee before I could make it myself. How Vanessa always insisted on plating my food. How their eyes flickered, just for a second, whenever I hesitated to take a bite. It all clicked. They weren't just watching over me. They were watching me suffer. I was their prey. But they had no idea the game was about to change. That night, I made my move. I knew I couldn't confront them, not yet. They were too careful, too controlled. If I wanted the truth, I had to let them think they were still winning. So, I played my role to perfection. I smiled when Liam handed me my coffee. I laughed at Vanessa's sharp little comments, as if I didn't feel the noose tightening around my neck. But I wasn't just playing along. I was watching, listening, waiting for them to slip. And then, the opportunity came. Sunday brunch at Vanessa's house. The usual routine, polished silverware, fresh pastries, perfectly curated conversations. And, of course, the coffee. Liam placed the cup in front of me, his expression calm, too calm. "Go on," he said. "I made it just for you." Vanessa watched me closely, her fingers absent-mindedly stirring her own coffee. A small, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I wrapped my hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into my skin. The scent was wrong, bitter, almost metallic. My stomach clenched, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled, lifted the cup to my lips. And in that single heartbeat, as their gazes locked onto me, I made my move. I stumbled, just slightly, letting the cup tip. Not enough to spill, just enough to make it look like an accident. My hand brushed against Vanessa's cup as I caught myself. A flawless exchange. And then I sat back, my heart hammering in my chest, and waited. She took the first sip. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Then, something else. Her fingers trembled as she set the cup down. I held my breath. "Vanessa?" Liam's voice was tight, uneasy. She blinked rapidly, her breathing shallow. "I don't. I feel." The color drained from her face. She clutched the table, her nails digging into the wood. Panic flickered in her eyes. Liam shot up from his seat, knocking over his chair. That wasn't supposed to happen. And in that moment, I knew. They had planned this together. Everything, the sudden illnesses, the dizziness, the nights I spent curled up in pain, while Liam told me it was just stress. It had all been orchestrated. And today? Today was supposed to be the final act. But the script had changed. Liam turned to me, his face pale. "What did you do?" I leaned back, my voice steady. "I think the real question is, what did you do, Liam? Before we continue, I want to connect with you, my incredible viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. I know you might be watching this alone, but I want to remind you that wherever you are not alone. Because right now, I'm here, telling this story with you." Vanessa's breathing grew ragged. She clutched her stomach, her entire body trembling. She was falling apart right in front of us. And Liam? He was frozen, staring at her, at me, at the cup. Then, in a breathless whisper, he said it, the words that shattered any last doubt. "That wasn't meant for you." Silence crashed over the room. And just like that, their perfect plan fell apart. Liam's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Vanessa's body jerked as she tried to steady herself, her hands trembling violently against the table. Her breathing had turned shallow, her face drained of all color. She clutched at her throat, eyes darting wildly between me and Liam as if searching for an answer. "Liam," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "What did you?" Liam lunged toward her, knocking over the chair in his rush. "Vanessa, you need to stay calm," he said, his voice cracking as he grabbed her shoulders. It's okay. Just breathe." But it wasn't okay, not for her. I watched as realization dawned in her eyes, the panic, the betrayal, the terrifying understanding that something had gone horribly, irreversibly wrong. You were supposed to," she choked, but she couldn't finish. I stood slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. "What was she supposed to do, Liam?" My voice was steady, but my hands had curled into fists at my sides. "Be sick? Like I was? Like I have been, over and over again?" Liam turned to me then, and for the first time, the mask he had worn for years slipped. The perfect husband, the charming, dependable man I had once loved, none of it was real. His face was pale, his pupils blown wide with fear. He knew it was over. Vanessa lurched forward suddenly, knocking the coffee cup to the floor as she struggled to stand. The porcelain shattered, dark liquid pooling at her feet. Her breathing hitched, her knees buckling beneath her. "We need an ambulance," Liam muttered, fumbling for his phone. His fingers shook so badly he almost dropped it. Vanessa clawed at his arm. "Don't," she wheezed. "They'll test." And just like that, I understood. She wasn't just afraid for herself. She was afraid of what they would find in her system. My stomach twisted. If the poison was still there, if the evidence hadn't already left my body, then I could finally prove it. Liam saw the change in my expression. "Madison," he said quickly, dropping his phone and stepping toward me. "This isn't what you think." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, then what is it, Liam? Because I'm pretty sure I just watched your sister drink the exact thing you've been feeding me for months." His jaw clenched, his eyes darting to Vanessa, who had collapsed onto the floor, her breath coming in short, pained gasps. He was calculating, trying to think of a way out. There wasn't one. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and pressed the button I had been waiting to use. The recording played clearly in the silent room. "That wasn't meant for you." Liam froze. Vanessa let out a strangled noise from the floor. I took a slow step forward, my voice calm despite the rage boiling inside me. "You just confessed, Liam, on tape. And I guarantee you when they test Vanessa's blood, it's going to match exactly what's been in mine." Liam's breath hitched. "Madison, please." The sound of sirens echoed in the distance. I smiled. "Game over." The sirens grew louder, piercing through the thick silence in the room. Liam stood frozen, his mind undoubtedly racing for a way out. But there was none. Not this time. Vanessa let out a weak, gasping breath as her body slumped against the floor. She was fading fast. I should have felt sympathy, maybe even guilt, but I didn't. Not after everything she had done. Not after all the nights I had spent curled up in agony, wondering if I was losing my mind. Liam turned to me, desperation flickering in his eyes. "You don't understand," he pleaded. "I was trying to protect you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Protect me? Or by poisoning me?" His hands curled into fists. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were working too hard, pushing yourself too much. Vanessa she needed the promotion, Madison. You already had everything." My blood ran cold. That was what this was about? My success? My career? "You tried to kill me. Over a job?" "It wasn't supposed to kill you," his voice cracked. "Just slow you down. Just enough to make them think you weren't reliable." I stared at him, horror settling deep in my bones. It was one thing to suspect, another to hear him say it out loud, to admit that he had been systematically breaking me down for months, all to make me fail, to let Vanessa take my place. A sharp knock rattled the front door, followed by a voice. "Police, open up." Liam's face twisted, torn between fight and flight. He turned toward Vanessa, but she was too weak to respond, barely clinging to consciousness. "Madison, listen to me," he whispered harshly. "You don't have to do this. You can fix this. Tell them it was a mistake, that you didn't know." I shook my head, stepping back. "I'm done saving you, Liam." The door burst open. 2 officers rushed inside, weapons drawn. One immediately dropped to Vanessa's side, checking her pulse. The other turned to Liam. "Sir, hands where we can see them." Liam raised his hands, his face unreadable now. But his eyes, there was something unhinged there, a quiet kind of fury. "She set me up," he said, his voice eerily calm. "She switched the cups. She poisoned my sister." The officer turned to me. Ma'am, is that true? I met Liam's gaze. Check the recording. I handed over my phone. The officer pressed play, and Liam's own voice filled the room. That wasn't meant for you. The officers exchanged a look. That was all they needed. One grabbed Liam, twisting his arms behind his back. Liam Carter, you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. You have the right to remain silent, Liam struggled, his face twisting in rage. You think you've won? He spat at me. You think they'll believe you? You! The officer shoved him forward. That's enough. I stood motionless, watching as Liam was dragged out in cuffs. Vanessa followed soon after, carried out on a stretcher, barely conscious. And just like that, it was over. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Liam's texts, Vanessa's medical records, the toxicology reports from my own hospital visits. The jury took less than an hour to convict them both. I sat in the courtroom, unmoving, as the verdict was read, guilty, on all counts. Liam stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Vanessa, now fully recovered, broke down into silent tears. The judge's voice rang clear. In light of the premeditated nature of these crimes, this court sentences the defendants to the maximum penalty allowed. The gavel struck. Liam turned his head, meeting my eyes one last time. There was no remorse there, just hatred. I didn't care. I walked out of that courtroom without looking back. 1 year later, I stood at the front of a conference hall, the keynote speaker at the biggest business summit of the year. I took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of faces. Success isn't just about hard work, I began. It's about resilience. It's about knowing who to trust and who to leave behind. Applause filled the room. I smiled. Liam and Vanessa had tried to destroy me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about survival. It's about trusting your instincts, even when the people closest to you try to make you doubt them. Madison's journey reminds us that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, but from those we trust the most. But in the end, resilience wins, strength wins, and the best revenge? It's not about getting even, it's about moving forward, thriving, and refusing to be broken. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Drop a 2 in the comments if you liked it, or a 7 if it wasn't for you. And if you've ever felt betrayed or underestimated, share your thoughts. I read every comment. Don't forget to hit that like button if this story kept you on the edge of your seat. And subscribe for more gripping stories like this. You won't want to miss what's coming next.